So I think what I'd like to do is let the program begin. So our guest is coming to us from the Central Time Zone today. Bob Heil has a long history in radio and in different and unusual sound reinforcement. And some of you may only know him from the microphones that have been out for a few years, but he goes back a little further than that. Before we started here, he mentioned his time at KMOX and the mentioned the person that I used to listen to at night at KMOX. So that goes back into my history a little bit. So what I think I'll do is I will mute all. I think I'm able to do that, and then I will unmute Bob Heil. And Bob, if you're set, we'll get started.
He's not. He's still muted.
I'm aware, and I'm clicking on unmute, and it wasn't working. Okay, he's unmuted now.
I clicked the button. Well, it's really my honor to be with you guys. I've spoken at a few of the SB.
Oh, you got about 6 more dB?
Oh yeah, I got lots.
All kinds of equipment there.
Yeah, that's even better.
There you go.
Make sure we got that together. Okay. Yeah, I've spoken at several SBE meetings over the years here locally at St. Louis, and did a couple on the West Coast actually when I lived out there for a few years. But I really appreciate and honor what all you guys do, because I know it's more than pushing buttons, and sometimes it gets really crazy. But I started my career early. When I was 12. My parents bought me a Hammond organ. And did this picture coming up okay for you?
Yes.
Okay. Because I got a whole bunch of slides we'll run through quickly. I started at 12 years old playing the organ, the Hammond organ. And at the age of 15, I ended up at the Fox Theater in St. Louis. I was a substitute there, and then I played for many years at the Fox and throughout the country. Playing these monstrous Wurlitzers. I even built a pipe organ in the Holiday Inn here in St. Louis at the airport. It was a 4-star restaurant in that, at the time, 1959, that was the largest Holiday Inn in the chain, 600 rooms on one floor. It wasn't a 2-story. And I really enjoyed that. It was a lot of fun to build it, but more than that, we'd have busloads of people coming from coast to coast to see this menagerie of a theater pipe organ in a restaurant. And it was very, very much fun. The console came from the Covent Garden in Chicago. We totally rebuilt it. I even put a Hammond organ inside it too. So that was fun. And after about 12 years of playing, I got tired of that at night, all that. I opened a little music shop in Marissa, Illinois, 50 miles southeast of St. Louis. And I never knew what was going to happen. I became a Hammond organ dealer, and that was it. That's my father standing in the door down halfway. He had a clothing store there, men's shoes, he and my mom. But I did a lot of work with the Hammond organ because I knew it well. I mean, big time well. I was one of the first to be able to tear it in half and make it portable. That was along about 67. You'll notice behind me lots of Sun amplifiers. I loved Sun because they were actually Dynakit amplifiers. They were 5881s, very hi-fi, but they had the Sun brothers had built a magnificent company with you building that circuit, and that was a Sun amp, and their speakers were amazing. They were folded horns and just all kinds of stuff with JBL speakers. That was my first product in 1968. I put together a little mixer because I started to go out doing some sound gigs, and I graduated quickly. This was one of our first products as Heil Sound, the Heil Sound company. You'll notice that it's about a 1/4 inch panel thick. It was zinc, and they were really rugged. And I did it in a mother-daughter board. That was probably one of the very first consoles that had electronic crossover in it, stereo left and right. And it was all modular, so a kid could come in and buy 3 channels if he couldn't afford all of it and add them as he want. But the best part was if you had a problem and you're in Rocky Mountain, wherever, what do you do with it? First of all, you lost your job because you have to take it apart. No, this was all modular. It'll still work without that in place. Down on the right side was a 4-channel mixer. And usually we built that, it had equalization and everything in it, pan, pot, monitors in, so we could put the drums in there. It was very revolutionary. It also came with this. And this is a repair kit. That came with it, had a Phillips screwdriver, because I didn't think maybe a lot of guys had a screwdriver, spare fuses. But what's on the left side in that case is the module for the power amps. And as I had learned later on, it was the first modular power amp. I had a 400 watt RMS and a 200 watt. But I rolled through the Fox one day to see some of my old buddies, hadn't been there in a while, and they had all these out in the alley. And I'm going, what are you doing with these? These were Olson bins. If you know about Harry Olson's dive into this speaker business back in the 30s, well, they gave them to me. Well, I was thrilled. I'm a ham. I'm an organ player. I'm just having fun building things. I had no idea where it was going to go. But where it went was I started getting requests from Kiel Auditorium in St. Louis for all kinds of artists that would come in there. There's young Dolly Parton, and this was 1968. And it was wonderful. But a lot of people started calling me, a lot of managers, hey, can you help us? We need PA, because I didn't know, but nobody had done this yet. Not in 67 and 68. They were still using vocal masters and little junky EV columns. The first one was this guy. The manager says, how'd you like to do a little tour? Well, I had never done a tour, but a couple of the roadie kids that were working for me said, let's do it. We would go to Ohio, and guess what? It was the James Gang with Joe Walsh. And we discovered about 2 shows in that Joe and I were both ham radio operators, and our friendship and our union just went crazy. We become best of friends and still are. And it's all about, keep in mind, my basis is ham radio. I barely got out of the senior in high school because I was already making more money than the teachers. So I have no use for this crazy high school stuff. Definitely not college. But Joe and I were doing all kinds of things out on the little tour scene. And that was all right before 70. Then the biggie hit. I got this call from a guy. It was the stage manager of the Fox. And he said, hey, you still have, this is 4 years later, 3 years later. He said, you still have those big speakers? Yes, I do. They work? Yeah, I put them together. They're working. I got some things. And what you see in there is the Grateful Dead. What had happened, a piece of music history, if you guys are into this, they were to come to St. Louis. They were going to do 4 or 5 little jobs. Well, the night before was their first job in New Orleans. And the sound man, Owsley, he was kind of on probation. He wasn't supposed to be out of the California limits. And he comes to New Orleans on his way to this little tour. The FBI padlocked him and took him and the equipment in the truck out of there at the last of that concert. Came on to St. Louis, and the stage manager at 4 o'clock in the afternoon of the show, they show up, where's the gear? It's not here. They call back to California, find out he's in jail. Now what do? You got a full house sold at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. They're beating the doors down, if you know how the Grateful Dead Deadheads played. So we went up and helped them out with some PA. Now, what you're seeing there is some of the front fills. That picture isn't wide enough to see all the Olsen bins and stuff, but those were the front fills of those wonderful Sun bottoms. They were great JBLs, and it was a great time.
Bob, we were actually seeing your camera. Now we were seeing the still. Thank you.
Here's the show of it. And they had their gear because they had packed that in the bus, luckily. But I came along. We got in there about 9 o'clock, and that was a scene, man. They were sitting up on the back of all the seats in this 6,000 seat velvet seated, wonderful theater that was my second life for many years, playing the organ there before the shows and in between. But anyway, that started a big deal. I became very good friends with Jerry Garcia. Now you got to realize that you were looking at a guy that has never toasted, and I have never tasted beer. I've never smoked a cigarette. I've never done drugs. And that's my best friend, he and Walsh. But we were. And why? Because they would come to my place in Illinois, Marissa, and they could talk to somebody that understood them. That was the biggest deal, because a lot of music shops, not all of them in those days, are still selling trumpets for band instruments. They didn't want to get in that rock and roll scene in 1965. Well, hey, I was a ham. I also was a musician, and I understood they wanted certain things to happen. And so I could talk to them and get them what they wanted. And my music shop became a really big deal quickly. It became the rock and roll capital of the whole country. People would come from England and spend time to buy things because I had all kinds of Les Pauls and Gretches and things that you couldn't find in the store. And I'd let them play it. I didn't care. It became a big deal for me personally. I was glad to help them. Well, what I did is I started thinking about all this stuff. I said, you know what? We need to get with the program. And I didn't like the JBL horns or any horns that were metal because they rang like a church bell. And I had a friend that had a fiberglass shop, and we started building these front-loaded horns and things in fiberglass. Boy, did they sound great. They were really, really good. And there is, you see a picture of the Olsons on the left, but all the rest, it's all fiberglass horns. Up on the top where the two guys were, two of my employees. And those were long throw horns, fiberglass, 20 by 40 degrees. So I could put those in that was a 10,000, no, it was a 15,000 seat arena. And I could shoot that vocal right up to that back rafter and then fill it in with the other white ones on the right side halfway down. And it was all about splaying. And that was so very important. And I didn't know what was happening, but it sure the hell sounded good, I can tell you that. And the groups never had played through anything like this. But now what am I going to do about a console? I couldn't use that little mixer you saw, the little 6-channel. Well, everybody else was. We were using little Alltech mixers. You guys probably fingered and operated a lot of those little green boxes with knobs. Well, that's what we had to do. But I bought this Longevin, and gosh, the thing was, it was $10,000. That was an amazing amount of money for me at the time, but I borrowed the money, and here we are. But it didn't work well. Why? Because it was very sensitive. It was a studio Longevin. It wasn't made for any kind of arena. So one of the kids that worked for me said, hey, I got this friend of mine. We went to high school together. He just graduated from college at U of I on film sound and electrical engineering. He said he can probably help us. And so we called him, and he came down, and he was wonderful. Tommy Holman, Tomlinson Holman, the THX guy. He came down, helped me for a few weeks rebuilt that board. Yeah, I'm a ham and I'm not too worried about diving into anything, but that was beyond me at the time. And Tom helped us get this thing together, and we've been friends ever since. What do you do for an amplifier? I'm going, I heard Macintosh was pretty good, so I went and bought 50 of them. That was tough because Gordon Gow thought I was nuts, but I came there with cash money. Went to New York, had my little suitcase full of money, and I bought these amplifiers. And yeah, they were good, but they wouldn't last very long. They were made to sit on a walnut shelf. And here's this dizzy kid from Illinois throwing them in a trailer of a 40-foot semi without any kind of air ride. Didn't have it in those days. But we did okay, and we'd keep them going, but that wasn't the answer. And at the same time, I was doing monitors, so we needed even more of them. We were one of the first companies to do monitors. How do you do it? How do you work? How do you make monitors go without feedback? You're going to learn in just a little bit. Got a great demo. Well, then I get the call from this guy, Paul Klipsch. Hey, that you, Heil? I said, yes, sir. Who's this? That's Eclipse here. And I'm going, this is God on the other end of this phone. Ooh. What can I do for you, sir? You the guy that's got that 10,000 watt PA? And I said, yes, sir. He said, I want to come and see that. He flew his Bonanza up, and I figured he was going to cut me off at the knees, but he didn't. He was much taller than I, and all day it was like, why'd you do that? Well, how come? Why? Put me in the plane, took me back to Arkansas, and I got to tell you, I learned so much from Paul Klipsch. He taught me about all of the things of what Western Electric and the AT&T guys did back in the 20s, how our ears worked. And I can't tell you what a wonderful experience. No, I didn't go to college, but you're very sure that you're looking at one of my great professors. He was a great friend to me. And anytime I'd get into some big time, I'd go down to Hope and we'd make it happen. There's what he taught me that really worked. I learned to listen, mentally dissect what you hear. A lot of people don't listen. They only hear. Hearing is a physical. Oh, yeah, I heard. But did you really go in and mentally dissect all the harmonics and all the things that happen with audio? And it really turned my whole life around because I was listening. And we started building big systems, all fiberglass, incredibly sound. There you'll see those long throws. You'll see 60-degree horns, 90-degree horns. The tweeters were what Paul was using in his K horns. Those were Electro Voice T35s, but they were put in a little parabolic horn that we made out of fiberglass. And it was just a remarkable time in my life to be able to turn this on to people. Then what happened? Oh boy, the word got out. Here's this kid that's got all this sound, and we started doing a couple of rock fests. Boy, did I hate that. I love the technology of putting it together. There's a very neat piece of technology. There are two stages in between the three pieces of the sound system. And you can see on the outer edges of that, those Olsen bins, there were 6 of them, 3 on each side. You could actually feel that low end down around 30, 40 cycles, several acres away with no problem. And everything was splayed right and so on, and equalized properly with that great Langevin console. And it was a wonderful time for me. I also did another one real close to that in St. Louis at the Forest Park. Do any of you know who that group is? Probably nobody. Nobody ever guesses it. So I'll tell you. It was their first tour. That was their second date. ZZ Top without beards. And we made great friends. I just a few hours ago heard from Billy. He's a wonderful person, very well read. But I needed better amps. These amps are falling apart like crazy. We used a bunch of Sun amps for those festivals. We did about 4 of them for the festivals. So I go to Indiana, and I had borrowed a bunch of cash again. Always paid it back. It was easy. The little bank there, and no problem. I go in to sit down in front of Clyde Moore. If you guys are hams, you know who Clyde Moore was. Forget about the amplifier. He's the guy that invented the cubical quad. Why? Because he had this incredible 100,000 watt station on shortwave feeding down to South America and back. And it was so much power, it burned the ends off of the antennas. So he did the cubical quad. If you didn't know that, now you do. But anyway, I sat down in front of his guest, and he said, "What can I do for you, young man?" I said, "Well, I want to buy some amps." "How many do you want to buy?" I said, "I'd like to buy about 20. You want to buy 20 of our DC300? They had just come out with them. I said, "Yes, sir." He said, now remember, he was a very religious guy. And I said, "First of all, what's all the bells?" "Oh," he said, "it's 10 o'clock. You have to come with me." And at 10 o'clock, the plant shut down, and they had a little chapel right in the middle of the plant, and we had to go to chapel. Everybody did. And so we did. And I loved it because we got to pray, and like you normally do, because I went to church and all that. Come back to his office. "Okay, young man, what are you going to do with these amplifiers?" And I said, "Well, I have a sound system that I built, and we do a lot of these rock and roll." I didn't even get roll out of he comes flying out of that desk. "Nobody's going to use our amplifiers for the devil music. You get out of here." So I go back. The sales manager was very distraught because he's watching this guy walk out the door with tens of thousands of dollars in case. Take me to the airport. I come back to Marissa. A couple of weeks later, I get a call from him. "We had to figure it out, Bob. The old man's going to let me do this." That's what he called him. I said, "What are we going to do?" "We're going to sell you our DC300s. You're going to put them in a case, right?" "Yeah, it's going to be a Tolex case with transformers, stand core balance line transformers, and XLR plates and all that. We're going to ruggedize that thing." He said, "Well, that's exactly what I told the old man." He said, "And we're going to give you the company that you can buy the sticker from, and you take ours off. In fact, you'll get them without the sticker." So that's the story of the Heil Sound Omega amplifier. Phase Linear calls me about a year later. "Bob Carver. Hey, would you like to have a 700 watt amp?" "Yeah, who's this?" "It's Bob Carver." He said, "I want to start this company. And I could build you a 700 watt amp, and I could build you a 400 watt amp. But I need some seed money." And so here we go again. I was paying all these guys back because we were really doing quite well. And so I sent him the money. He said, "We'll paint them any color." Well, they didn't paint them. They were beautiful. They're anodized purple and anodized blue for the 400 and 700. And they worked great for a while. What's wrong with them? Well, what was wrong with them was they blew up. You guys probably know, it came upon the name flame linear. I mean, they would catch on fire, but they did work well if you didn't overdrive them. Well, we still, okay. So then we built our own amps later on. But then I get a call from these guys, and they said, "Are you the guy that's got that big PA that did the Gretville Dead?" And I said, "Yes, sir." "Who's this?" "This is the Who." I said, No. Who are you?" "We're the Who." Now, you got to understand, Bob Heil was a theater organist, and I really wasn't in tune with a lot of these heavy-duty rockers, especially from England. I hardly knew who the Beatles were in those days. But anyway, they said, "No, we need you over here tomorrow." "Where's here?" "In Boston." I said, "Why?" "Well, we came to America last week. We got all new music, and we've got these little columns," and they were little Watkins Electric Music. They're little columns like a Shure Vocal Master. They had 6 of them. They were trying to do thousands of seats, like 5,000 and 6,000 seats. It didn't work. And the media ripped him apart the first 2 dates. And they heard about me. They called me. I said, we can't do this. I can't get there fast enough. Well, get on a plane. I said, it's a 40-foot semi full of stuff. Well, we're in an airplane. I said, it won't fit. He said, you call Tiger Air Freight and they'll drive it on. That's what I did. And that's what we did. And we had built this system that for Sun. It was kind of a prototype that I had designed for them. And I'd never really done a lot of dates with it. I did that one for Chaka Khan in Chicago. That's where we were when I got the call, because Chaka was using our talk box, which we'll talk about later. But that was a great system, one side, solid state amps of theirs, plus some of the crowns and some of the phase linears. And that's Bobby Pridden, their sound man, and I. And we went to Boston, and we actually saved, we really did this. I know it sounds maybe egotistical. It's not. It's a fact. It's history that we've saved. They were ready to pack up and go home. But no, the media died. They just killed them. I wish I would have kept that one paper. There was a newspaper out of there, and they had the "Who is Dead." And I'm going, oh no. But we became very good friends. That was the other thing. Very, very good friends. And it was all because I could help them. And we started doing more and more shows. This, I got a little more aggressive. This is the mixers that we built for that system. We didn't use the Longevin. I designed this system, and if you recall, it's very similar to my Omega system. It's modular. It also had my electronic crossover in it, a stereo crossover, but we needed more than 8 channels. And here we tied them together. Here's an interesting thing for you guys. You might recognize what's on top of them. We, for the first time, well, with the Who, we were using long 250-foot mic cables, a snake, so to speak. And we didn't have enough drive out of these consoles. Well, what am I going to do? So I grabbed these line amps from JBL for some of it. I didn't have enough. So on the left is a stereo amplifier from Sony. Guess what? It worked beautifully. And you see, a ham is not afraid to try anything. And that particular show you're looking at was Eric Clapton at the Kiel Auditorium. That was right after some of the stuff with the Who. And it just went on and on from there. And the Who we became really good friends, I got to tell you. And if you couldn't be a friend of mine, I don't want to work for you. And Townsend always put it kind of cool. He said, leave the guy alone. Don't feed him drugs. He doesn't do that. He's got a soldering iron. He knows how to use it. He makes it sound good, and he can drive the truck. And I did. So that was my whole deal with these guys. They become very friendly with me. They put their drugs away. They finally found somebody that understood that they weren't crazy. They were cool guys that needed help. I get a call in 1973 from Pete. He says, come over here. I want to talk to you. Here's a little piece of history along with that, guys. I'm sure you all know the Who's Next, the da-da-da-da-da-da-da introduction. You might use it in your own stations for stuff, okay? That's what he did it on. It was a Lowry Holiday organ. I was freaked out being an organist. I was expecting some big art computer. Nope. And so anyway, what are we doing? He said, quad sound is coming into effect here. It's really big. What do you think about building us a console that I can move Roger's voice around an arena? We can do that. You understand? No is not in my vocabulary. I got stumbled a couple times, but I'm a ham. I got a soldering iron. Let's go. At the time, thank goodness, it was so much of my life, God put me in the right place at the right time. And this was another one. We had been working with a sister company in England to build a really high-end console. And it was 15 channels based on my little HM1000. It had to be modular, had to have electronic crossovers, all that. But we had parametric EQ in it, so the mids were parametric. And it was really cool. You can notice, though, it's got 4 outputs. The monitor was in the middle. And those red knobs were actually pan pots. Other models of it, we actually put joysticks in it. But this was being built about the same time that Peter asked me, what can we do? Well, I went over to IES. That was our sister company in England, International Electronic Service. And what happened there is we had like systems. Fiberglass cabinets, all that. We built 2 systems and complete those biggies, one over there, one over here. So if they came over here, they were doing ELP and a lot of groups. I was over there doing English bands. We didn't have to fly all of our gear. But there was a console we built called the Mavis, and that was the key. We were so thrilled. So was Pete. I called him back and said, we can do it. Notice behind Entwistle, the bass player. He's only about 5 feet. Those are monitors, and we had that many on the other side. And you're going to say, well, how come they didn't feed back? I'll tell you in a minute. But you see another one over Pete's head down in the lower left. You can almost see the Heil sticker in that horn right in the back of his head. Same thing with Mooney, the drummer. Notice right above this cymbal is one of my black horns. That was a riff. It was a whole bank of horns. And they didn't feed back. I know you're all saying, well, that's impossible. Well, you're going to learn in a minute it was. Then we had a really cool thing with Jeff Beck. This was the first time that he was going to have a vocalist with him. He was always an instrumental guy and still is. This was going to be a trial. So they called me and they said, what are you going to do for monitors? So I go to Hope, Arkansas. He had speakers called the Scala. They were about this high, had 15-inch speakers, a radio horn, and those T37s. And I thought that'd be good, but they're too big. So I go to Hope and I said, Paul, I need you to do me a favor. What's that? I want to build 4 La Scalas, but I want to put 12 inchers in them. And he just went unglued. You can't do that. You're going to lose all the bass. I know that. I don't want anything under 120, 30 cycles. What are you going to do with it? And see, he didn't understand what monitors are all about, but he did it. Boy, was that successful. Wow. We lined those babies up in front of Jeff's knees. I could have moved him back. It was really loud. And he was so thrilled because he could hear the vocals. And so these are the things that we did for the groups as they ask. Jeff was doing smaller halls. We wanted to get in and out really quick. So I built this system just for Jeff. And you'll notice that there's in the middle of those bass cabinets, that was a rear folded horn. There was the same thing that we were using with the Sun bass cabinets. We used D140s in them. We used, I didn't have enough fiberglass horns just at the moment because we had to hit the road. So I had a whole bunch of JBLs and they worked okay. And you'll see the 2 JBL ring tweeters, 2205s. They're incredible. But that's what we did for these guys. But what happened along the way is Joe was starting up with Barnstorm. And he had played a small thing in a studio where he recorded that. And here's a piece of music history for you. Back in 1939, Alvino Ray, he had an orchestra called the Alvino Ray Orchestra, and his wife was this vocalist. But he was a ham radio operator. We used to talk to each other on 20 meters every morning for years before he passed away. Anyway, he took a throat microphone out of an airplane in World War One and Two, and he put it on his wife's throat. Now, it's supposed to be plugged into an amplifier, and so when she talked, it would amplify her voice. He did the reverse. He put the output of his guitar amp into this module, and when she would sing and he would play, her voice would be modulated by the guitar, and it sounded like the guitar was talking. Singing actuator is what he called it. Dormant for many years. Dormant. 1950, there was a steel guitar player in Nashville. He had a very, very popular song. It was like #1 called Forever Yours. And he had taken a little box, put a little 3-inch speaker and a hose, and he could make it kind of talk, his steel player, steel guitar. Well, when Joe was in that studio, he saw that sitting over in a corner, and he said, whoa. But it wouldn't be loud enough for a 10,000 watt PA. But also, I keep telling you, being placed at the right time. George Harrison came over right after Joe into that same Nashville studio, guitar player studio. And he brought a young man with him to play with him. He was, I think, 16 or 17 years old. That young guitarist was Peter Frampton. And Peter saw that thing over in the corner. What is that? Somebody showed it to him, played on a steel. Wow, he was fascinated by it. Now you move along in time. That never left Peter's head. Joe and I are out with Rocky Mountain Way, and it was just great. We had so much fun. Everything worked so well. And what happened there is we had done almost all of the U.S. shows for Humble Pie, and their lead guitarist was Peter Frampton. But Peter's management pulled him out as a solo act. And they called me on the phone and said, hey, we're pulling him out. I want you to make him sound really good. Well, he had a band called Frampton's Camel, and it wasn't very good. He quit in the middle of the tour, went back in 1974 to put this great band together in his mind. He wanted greatness. He had a girlfriend. Penny was one of the girls that hung around, and golly, she got together with Peter. She was married in my home in Marissa. A lot of English people would do that because they'd come over here and they didn't have a green card unless they had a job. Aha. Well, I hired them in our plant, or they were working with my sound system. So Penny called me one day, been a few months after the wedding, and she said, you got to help me. I said, what? I got to have a Christmas present for Peter. And don't send him a guitar. He's got a lot of them. So what did I send her? I sent her a talk box. What you're looking at is one of the very first few. I built it with a 100-watt driver in it. We had to really have something that was going to sing. And it was an Electro Voice 1183, I think it was, 100-watt screw-on driver. You guys have all played with them probably. And we made this fiberglass thing. We had a mold that kind of looked like that for a fan. And so I sent her a talk box. Of course, I'd already done it with Joe. We'd been out with Joe. What you're looking at is serial number 1 that's sitting in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. How blessed am I to be a part of that. We'll come back to some of that. I sold it in 1988. I wasn't doing anything in that business. I left the business in 1980. I couldn't put up with some of these heavy-duty rockers and the punk bands. I said, goodbye. Sold my system. But I sold the talk box to Jim Dunlop. A lot of you might know Jim. He made a lot of picks and all kinds of pedals. And I didn't want to see it go away. And he's still on the market. He sells it, that's one of his. What did I do? Here's where it gets good for you guys. You might be bored through now, but you for damn sure are not going to get bored now because it's your world. I'm a ham. And in 1979, I saw Bob Cooper on a television night show. And I'm going, wait a minute. And they're talking about his satellite system he'd built. And so to hurry it on up, I got a hold of Bob. We'd known each other. We were doing moon bounce in 1972 on 2 meters and 6 meters. Yeah. And it was incredible. I should have had that picture. I had 128 elements on 2 meters. We were damn serious about it in 1972. But when I got in the music business, I kind of went away from that for a long time. But anyway, I got involved in the satellite business, thanks to Bob. He used to have us come down to his place in Oklahoma on Saturdays, and he took a coffee can and showed us how to build an LNA in there. You probably have all done it. Well, I did too. And I mean, it became a real wonderful thing. Everybody in this little town of Marissa, 2,000 people, they all wanted one of these things. So we started putting satellite systems together. At the same time, I began a 25-year career on KMOX with Jim White. And here we were at one of the theaters doing a remote. We were on, though, at night with Jim for 25 years. KMOX become a big deal. I also was on Channel 2. That was the ABC in St. Louis at the time. During the newscast, they'd give me about 5 minutes to talk about high-tech toys. They named me High-Tech Heil. I also did a wonderful thing that I was so blessed. In 1991, I had met the Hubbard family. I know all of you know about the Hubbard family. This was the youngest. And he asked me to come to Minnesota because he'd seen one of my home theaters that I had done. I used to do them at the shows, at the CES shows and stuff. And he said, I have this dream, it was, of doing satellite only on a very small dish. I just bought the license. This is 1986. Paid tons of money for it for the first K-band. He said, then I could select exactly where to put it and I could cover all of the earth of the U.S. Okay. So I was shipped one of these test dishes in 1991 and was a beta tester. They'd send signals to me and I could give them all kinds of things as they were moving their rockets around. That picture was taken off a television. It was the first time from CES that RCA DirecTV was taken to the public. And I was one of the first dealers, and it was a great, great time. Because I was the first dealer, I mean, this is what has now become the front door of our plant, but it was so important that RCA shipped the dogs to me. And you can probably read on there about the big screens and Lucas THX. Some of those guys came down, and it was a wonderful time. And I had so much fun turning on people to what was happening. That's the vice president of RCA. That's the first RCA DirecTV installed in a home. It wasn't even on the market yet. That was a spec home that we had done because we were doing tons of things like this. People would call me and say, man, I want one of those home theaters you're doing. Can you do something with this room? I said, yeah, remember what I told you? No is not in my vocabulary. And so we did that to it. Back in that corner, that's where the gear went. We did tons of these things, and $200,000 and $300,000 rooms, and then we would take them to the CES. And in 1986, I think it was 85 or 86, this guy walks up to me and he said, I need to talk to you. You're doing all this audio stuff these last couple of years. Would you like to help me? I have a prototype of my ProLogic. Would you like to use it? That was Ray Dolby. And my life has been so it's so enhanced by all these guys that were teaching me things and letting me do things. And we became good friends and we helped him. But I better get into some things about what you might want to hear about. And that's these things. I was in the theater business for many years. We did a lot of them. And I said $200,000-$300,000 rooms to all kinds of celebrities, Jack Buck, Ozzie Smith from KSD radio. There was John Auble and all that, and KMOX celebrities. But all around the country we did these. But I kind of got tired of all of that because when the stuff hit the 99, 95 at the Best Buy, I said, see ya. And I left. Got back into my ham radio. You know, what you're seeing behind me is the kind of stuff. And what you see over here is actually some of that stuff. That's all vintage stuff. I'm on the air every morning with it. AM, of course. I do have over here, we've got a Central Electronics 20A. Have tons of stories about all the people we met there with the Art Collins and the West Shums and all of that. That's a whole nother day. But first of all, I started building headsets and microphones for them, but that, you know how that went. But in 2006, Joe comes to me. Well, Joe and I were good friends. We had moved into California, second home. Got to spend a few weeks here. You got to come and help me. I says, why? What do you need? I need you to do some of that microphone. I said, why? Well, the damn thing sounds terrible, and everybody wants to use them. I said, what's wrong with them? Well, first of all, they don't have any front to back. Remember that big antenna you had? When you turned that around, I couldn't hear you. Do that to my microphone. Okay. So Joe, turned me on to playing with microphones. And I'm going, well, what if we start listening again? Remember listening? And we talked about, to myself, things that I learned from AT&T and Western Electric. Paul Klipsch turned me on to this about power focus when you were doing speakers. Well, I never heard power focus ever, not in the ham radio. I didn't even heard it in the original, whatever you would call them, broadcast mics. So what do? You do this. You learn about, nothing is flat. The Dr. Fletcher, Dr. Munson curve teaches you that. I didn't know anything about it, and a lot of engineers don't know it. And it really, really makes me sad, especially some of the newbies. The newbies don't listen, and you guys all know how to do this, but the newbies, The Fletcher Munson curve. That's why kids want to listen to music 100 dB plus, because it's pretty flat up there. But you get down into the 2030s and you gotta ride at Disneyland. So I started working with Joe, and what I came up with was this. And I am sure that many of you have some of these in your stations. I'm going to change this. I better do this so you know I'm not. No games played. This is the wonderful PR40. Is everything still up okay? Yeah. 28 cycles on the low end. Got a really nice rise from 2 to 3K, because that's where I learned from the Fletcher Munson curve and from Paul Klipsch, and a lot of things from the 20s and 30s, that articulation happens from 2 to 3K. Well, most of these microphones don't. They're just flat. Oh, you got to have a flat sit. No, you don't. My ears are not flat. So in order for the human being to understand the spoken word, and if you do graphs of all this, and we did dozens of them, from 2 to 3K is where the spoken word is. And I know you guys know this, but here, I'll prove it to you. I just took 2K away. Yeah, it sounds okay. It sounds like most mics you hear. I call them muff baskets. We can't do that. I should put a camera on here so you know I'm not playing real games. The bass is flat, which is at 80 hertz. But now here comes that mid. That mid is sitting at 2.5K. And we'll put a little bit of 6, no, that's 8K. What am I talking about on the mixer? That's it. But listen how much better, how easy it is to understand the articulation. Because if I take it out, the articulation is gone. It's just totally gone. Well, why don't I build a microphone that does that? Well, guess what, gentlemen? Every one of them does without equalization. And then what do I do about Joe's request? What do you do? Front to back. All the microphones you got in your studios, they got 4 little stupid holes around them. I don't care whose it is. I don't care how much it costs. They don't have any rear rejection. How the hell do you do it? I know how I can do it. I can do it real easy. I took all of the elements that I was playing with, and they don't have 4 holes. The entire bottom is empty. And the only way I get any rejection is up through the bottom of it. You can see right there where it's coming from. The bottom is open, and we have our lows, our mids. They all come up what I call a collection tube. And that's why the microphone has these panels. When we first put it out, it was really kind of funny. I got a review from a magazine. They said, this thing is terrible. And I said, why? I don't know. I said, where are you talking? I'm talking in the side of it. Oh, my God. You didn't read the instructions. So now we print it right on the microphone. End fire. All of my stuff's end fire because I want all of the rear to come in here. Now, does it work? You darn right it does. You ready? If you're not listening, if you've been kind of sleeping, check it out. I'm not playing games with you. When I talk, first of all, another thing Joe wanted, he wanted it to be very omni on the front, not like these stupid ball mics where you just got to sit right here and don't move. Hey, I'm 90 degrees off and it didn't change. And I'm going to come and I'm going to do a full 180 and it didn't change. If you close your eyes, you didn't know I was moving. Beautiful. Now, what do you do about the rear? You get rid of it. It's gone. It's still working. But it's 40 dB down. 40 dB. You don't have a microphone in your studio that'll do that. Well, it really took off. I mean to tell you, we were so thrilled. So many broadcasters. We got thousands of them now. Sirius just dumped all their dumbass RE20s. It was a bad microphone when it was born back in 1966. It was. What was all this stuff down the side? It doesn't have any rear rejection. What is it? And I get really disgusted about it. We go, oh, I got that. Well, you're an egomaniac. You go to heaven. Well, not anymore. No. It's all about what's going on. Sirius just bought 250 of them last year. Fox News got a bunch. Leo Laporte's got his whole network, and on and on and on. And yeah, we're using them on stages for all kinds of neat things. But I'm very blessed to be able to work with artists that can work with us and tell us what they wanted. That's so good. But what am I going to do to teach you about how I did it? Well, I got it here at the end of today. I have this incredible demonstration. Okay. I'm going to unplug this microphone. I'm not changing anything. Okay, I have a Y cable. There are no tricks here. This is a scientific experiment. It really is. And if you've never done this, maybe you should. I might want to give it a little more gain because we've sucked out of it. We got two mics. Y cable. Okay. Just a standard old Y cable. And they both work identical because they're two PR22s. What's a PR22? Paul Rogers came to me years ago. He said, right after we did all got into the business, he said, you got to build me a microphone that's got really nice mid-range. Well, you call it articulation? I do. He said, well, that's what I want because some of my sound men, we do a lot of small venues and they don't know how to adjust. I don't want them to adjust. When I talk in the mic, I want it to be very clean and clear. So I did. I came up with the PR22 and it's become one of my popular microphones because it has this gorgeous, gorgeous articulation. But here's two of them. They're identical. What happens when I put them together, right? They just went up 3 dB. Can you hear 3 dB? No. The human being cannot detect 3 dB unless you're in an echo chamber. You might think you could, but you kind of guess a little bit. It's got to be a little bit more than 3 dB. I think you'll agree. But that's not what I'm here for. I have this wonderful little magic plug. Nothing wild about it. It's just a magic little plug. And I plug it in here. And you're all going to say, well, that's a big deal. What do you do? Because it sounds exactly like this. But it's out of phase. Pin 2s to 3 and 3s to 2, it's out of phase. What happens when I put two signals together out of phase? Nothing. Nothing. Oh, they still work. Together. This one, the diaphragm's going down. This one, the diaphragm's going up. What a wonderful experience when Paul Klipsch told me about that years ago. He was a phasing nut. If he ever saw his speakers out of phase, he just went ballistic. And phasing in antennas. I have a 75 meter phased array down in the Ozarks. It was incredible. 65 foot high, 65 foot apart, in and out of phase. All I had to do was switch in and just a switch. And it reversed the phase from one side to the other, but they were out of phase. And I could get about, think about this, you hams, I could get about 15 dB on 75 meters, front to back, East Coast to West Coast. I loved it. I was there for years, and I wish I had it here. But anyway, it's all about phasing. It's my favorite subject. I wish we had about another hour. We'd really get into it. There's so many things that it affects, but nobody ever talks about it. They say, oh, yeah, it's out of phase. But they don't listen. They don't pay attention. And so how did I learn all of that? Well, let me I learned a lot of it through, of course, my antennas. My antenna was, I was an antenna nut. Even at the age of 19, my parents let me put up a 110-foot Roan with a 36-foot long Telerex on 6 meters and one on 2 meters. And these are the things that I did. I was so aware of it in those days, but I didn't know what I was doing. But later I learned from my mentors of Paul Klipsch and all of these wonderful guys what I was doing. But one of the big things that led me to all of this, and this is something that I didn't know when I was doing all this stuff years ago. Yeah, I didn't know what I was doing, but I learned a lot of it from my pipe organ days, like those guys. That's what I see here on the other side of the camera. This is a new studio I built for it. I played professionally for 15 years at the Fox and all around the country on the big Wurlitzers. And I still play every day. I love it, but it's where I learned to listen. We had to tune and voice these monsters, 4,000 or 5,000 pipes, and we'd have trumpets and the one beside it. They all had to sound the same. No, they weren't. They were different tunings, of course, but the harmonics And I knew then that was something I needed to know about. I could hear it, but then later I found it's all about articulation, that mid-range to low end, how it all balances out. And I applied that to all of our microphones. And I was so thrilled to be able to share this with many, many people. And then, of course, what really hit, and I was so blessed that in 2006, many of what we did, I'm a ham. I don't throw much away. And these are a lot of the things that you might have seen during the presentation. They're in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. They came to me and they said, "Do you have some of that?" And I said, "Yeah, why?" Because I have been in business for years. They go, "Oh, well, I'm a ham. I don't throw anything away." You can notice on the lower part of the screen, that's that Longevin that Tom Holman helped me with. We did a lot of Grateful Dead and many, many others. You'll see the ZZ Top Sun console that I did there sitting on top of their road case. Right below the picture of Jeff Beck and I is one of our HM10s, HM1000s that really changed the world. A lot of people got into what I was doing. That first talk box is up there. And then the other side, there's the great Mavis console. And we built two of those. It was really great. And there's my power amp. You can see it with the 2 meters and the fan in the middle. And that's where that module plugs into. You take 4 screws out, pull that out of that rack, plug it in, you're back on the air. Underneath that was one of the first parametric equalizers and electronic crossover. I built also an audio analyzer back in. That happened in, oh golly, that was 75. And then there's one of our amps with just a blank plate on it. And then below it is one of the Omega crowns. But all of that stuff's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. The white speaker was one of the many speakers that were the rear speakers for the quad system that we did for Quadrophenia. So it's been a real journey, and it hasn't quit, because now we're on so many stages. We were out with Carrie Underwood since the day she won the award on the quiz show. But all the way through, I'm using this microphone in reference to my great friend that just passed away. He was the greatest American on a stage, and that was Charlie Daniels. About 12 years ago, he threw all of their ball microphones out and bought all Heil microphones. We built this for him. It's a PR35 and made it look like an American flag. We have a custom shop that we do all kinds of, a lot of stations. We have their call letters on them. Or we can do anything in-house, and it's really gorgeous. But that's really just part of the story. It continues on. We now are into all the podcasts. My gosh, I have a whole division of people. My stepson and his wife, they've been very, very vocal and out doing podcast stuff for about the last 6 years, before anybody was really into it. But many podcasters, this is their go-to microphone. So we're very blessed. So I probably bored you all to death. Anybody got some questions before we go get dinner?
Let me do an unmute all when I can remember how.
That's okay.
Where is it? Participants, unmute all. All right, so we're open with everybody, and let's take some questions.
Okay, so I see the one, that 119121, that isn't green.
I have a question.
Yeah, the one you're on.
Okay, I'm gonna mute anybody that's got background noise, but go ahead.
Somebody had a
It's Dave Biala. Can I ask a question?
Yeah, please do, Bob. I see
Hey.
most people are still muted, so go ahead while I sort that out.
Bob, I've been amazed by your products, and the big question that everybody always wonders, what's next?
I don't know. I had that question. I had it asked yesterday on a show we did down to Brazil, and what's next? I never know. I wake up in the morning, I come out here in this wonderful studio we just built because it's got all of my friends. You saw all of this stuff over here. It's been with me. The Harvey Wells was my first transmitter in 1956. It's still on the air in the morning. My theater organ's in here. You can see up top some of the speakers. Well, not really, but there's 10 speakers up. It's just amazing. I don't know where I'm going from here. I think we have really answered a lot of call for the broadcast industry, not only in what it does, but also how it looks. We're getting a lot of great reports from this guy on air. It's got our PR35, which is what this is, and it's got that good front to back. And so we're just getting that off the old shipping desk. We've shipped a few of them, but that's been hot. But I don't know. I'd like to do something for the broadcast industry, but you guys, you've already got it knocked. I mean, you do a great job. So I wish I had an answer for you. So I'm looking maybe to you guys for answers.
Bob, we had a question on chat from Peter Wharton. Did you have anything to do with the Heil air motion transformers?
That was done by a Dr. Oscar Heil. He was from Germany, a German physicist. He built that, came over and begged me to market it for him before he put it on the market. And I was at the time when I was dead long into Klipschorns and Klipsch and JBL. I didn't take it on because it wasn't very good. I know, I get a lot of arguments. Don't ever put it against a K-horn. And I didn't like the tweeter thing, that Venetian blind thing. And as it turned out, they failed a lot. So the thing kind of went by the way. But no, I didn't do anything with him. No relation.
Let's see, we have another question from Jonathan Solomon. What are your thoughts on current rock and roll PA? Has it gotten better, or is it just good enough?
No, it's terrible. I won't go to concerts. I don't like. Why don't I like it? Because they're all hung in the ceiling, many floors up. They're way too loud.
Yep.
They have way too much low end. But my biggest gripe, speakers cannot be up here. They need to be at ear level. And when we were doing it, man, our stuff sounded so damn good because it was the right thing. And the speakers were from the stage just like their voices were. Why'd they get rid of it? Because it was cutting out sight lines, and they could sell more tickets if they had a few more seats. I'm telling you the truth. And I really got out of the business because some of that, when the punk rockers come in, no, man, we want to dance around the stage and do that. Well, Townsend did that, but the sound was so good because it was right here. You are not, I don't care who you are, going to take tweeters and put them 50 foot in the air, and that's what they are, and make it come to you in a nice sound. You can't do it. Mid-range is always screaming loud, and it, again, has a lot of phasing problems. And so, no, I don't like it. And so therefore I quit. And that's how I handled it. But I would imagine a lot of you guys agree with me. They're much, much too loud.
Let's see, we have a question from Eric Schechter. What speakers do you have with your home 2-channel audio system?
Oh, you're going to laugh about this. Let's see. Can you see them? Yeah. 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 I shouldn't do this. This is Russian roulette. You see those little JBLs up there?
Tunes.
Yes. You can't see the ones here that I listen to. Beside that, just a couple. I used Control One with a real nice big old Yamaha subwoofer. That's what I listen to because I don't listen to a lot of music. I listen to a ton of organ stuff, but this is good enough for me. I don't. I'm not ashamed. That's what I do. I've had my days and all of the big stuff when I used to have K horns and all that, but I'm all right. But that's what I do. So, oh my God, the social media will be ripped up by Bob Heil used to do little bass speakers. Yeah, that's right. Because believe me, I had big ones. But hey, I'm happy with it. That's all I can tell you.
Let's see. So Peter commented, so all the years of rock and roll and you never fell in love with the music.
Well, I did. I certainly did. I certainly did. Absolutely. I mean, some of the stuff that Joe does is really good. Not with the Eagles, well, a couple of the Eagles, but his solo stuff is really good. Peter Frampton is amazing. If you ever hear some of his stuff, he's amazing. And I like a lot of that stuff. What I don't like is this hardcore rash'em bash'em rock and roll. And I know they all do that too, but they all have a soft side to them. But I can only tell you that most of the music that I do today, listen to and do, is that baby. If we had a little time, I'd fire that baby up for you. Maybe let's come back and do that sometime, because I can walk about 20 feet and it'll be happening. But
that would be great. I'm originally from St. Louis, so I know the Fox, and I didn't know any of the people. So this is, amazing.
Yeah, I was starting in 1955 through 65.
Let's see.
You remember that name?
Stan Can, sure.
Yeah, I'm his protege.
I remember. I don't think I ever saw him at the Fox, but he would show up on KMOX regularly to talk.
Really? That picture you saw a while ago, me and KMOX, he came as a guest of mine. Yeah. Wow.
Let's see. Another question John asks, curious about the topology of your early modular consoles. Were they discrete mic preamps and were they transformer coupled?
Oh, yeah. Not the original ones. No. But the Mavis was. Oh, yeah. That's why the darn thing weighed 300 pounds. Yeah. I had to keep the money down for the guys. These were for club bands and stuff, but they sounded great. They worked well. I still get emails from guys that are using them after all these years. So, yeah, it worked okay.
Carl Swanson asks, when is your show? Whoops, my thing just jumped. When is your show on 50-55 kilohertz? Is it weekly?
12, on the WTWW, Saturdays, usually 7:30, right in that range. They vary a little bit, but right in there. And of course,
for those of you who are keeping track, he's in the Central Time Zone, so adjust for where you are.
And you also want to pay attention to our Ham Nation. We do that every Wednesday night on Leo Laporte's network at 8 o'clock Central. Just put Ham Nation into Google. Joe comes in every once in a while. He plays the theme for us. He wrote the theme for it. But it's all about ham radio and technology, stuff like that, as well as other craziness. But that's the way it is. Well, we'll have to come back and I've got more also, but I got to get moving because I got another thing coming up here at 7:30, and I got to eat dinner in between. But I really am honored to be with you. And anytime, man, I've got a lot of things we can out, a lot of things to do. And we just touched the surface of it.
Well, I think we're definitely going to have an encore somewhere. And, of course, we're all coming up with ways to put on presentations. We're so used to going to a particular place and seeing a presentation. And I think a lot of us learned there's amazing things that you can do with video conferencing now that are far more than just getting 5 salespeople together to talk about something.
Sure.
We would never be able to get this group together otherwise.
Well,
And so an encore is definitely in our future, I think.
I mean, some of your buddies, other chapters, if they're looking for something, why, we're always there. I do 2 or 3 of these at a week, sometimes more than that, but plus the Ham Nation. So I'm pretty busy, and the Ham Nation is great for me. But also we have the thing I do with the organ thing. And I also record a lot of stuff for some of my friends on the organ. So it's great times. I'm very blessed, let me tell you.
We're blessed to have you. Really wonderful presentation.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
Fantastic.
And more, we'll come
Thank
back.
you, Bob. Really enjoyed
Bob,
it.
thank you so much. I think everybody, I mean, the comments are just wonderful. Everybody's very happy.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you so much, guys.